I literally just remembered this guy, so I'm quickly writing it down here so I don't forget it. For a little background, this happened in Florida, 2004 to 2006. Yeah, I'm an early 2000s kid. I'm a female, and at the time I was around 5 to 7 years old, and I have an older sister that is a few years older than me. I am a French American and grew up overseas, so visiting my grandparents in America had always been an interesting experience. The story I want to tell you is about my grandparents' neighbor. The neighbor was a very old, skinny man, from what I can remember, who had a wife. We never really saw the wife much besides her trimming the hedges and occasionally staring at my sister and I while we ran around our grandparents' backyard. To make sense of the following events, my grandparents used to live in the house the neighbors lived in. So when my grandparents moved, they only moved one house over. I remember having left a few toys in that old house and had always wanted to go in there on my own time and try to get them back, but this never happened. I remember on several occasions, the neighbor, this old man, would try and coax my older sister and I to come into his house. Sometimes he would try this with us separately, and another time he would try to get us to enter his house together. I was just a little kid at the time, but I do remember certain things in detail. There was one encounter with our neighbor that I'll never forget. I was playing out in the backyard looking for lizards and whatnot when I saw the neighbor waving at me. I remember watching him for a bit before trotting over to him. He seemed to be signaling for me to come into his garage. Right before I did so, my older sister appeared behind me and grabbed my hand. She told me off for almost going into our neighbor's property. When I told her what happened, I remember she looked over at him. The old man began to say things like, "Your dog is in my garage. She wandered in here. Come get your dog. I'll even give you two some candy," and stuff like that. After a few minutes of this, I had grown kind of bored and sat down on the grass. I remember my older sister leaning down a bit to speak in my ear. She said something like, "When I say we go, we run. Got it?" I just nodded in return, wondering why we would need to run. As my older sister stared the man down, he soon began to start walking out of his garage. The neighbor began to talk about Candy, our dog, and other things while he began to approach us. I remember looking at him in confusion as the man began to walk in our direction. Seeing the man walking towards us, my sister whispered, "Now!" And we both ran as fast as we could back to the house, with the man screaming at us to come back. Once we ran inside, my older sister told my parents what happened, and they confirmed we should never talk to the man ever again. Oh, and by the way, our dog had been inside the house the entire time, and she was fine. At the time, I just thought it was a weird encounter and tossed it aside. Several times after that, I remember the neighbor trying to get me to follow him inside when I had wandered too close to their house. This always ended with me tempting death and waiting till he was a few seconds away from grabbing me before I darted back to the house. Either that or my older sister would come to rescue me. When I was around 9 years old, the old man died. Although I don't really remember, I think it was something to do with his heart. To be honest, At the time, I didn't really care at all. I was happy he was gone, so my older sister and I wouldn't get creeped on anymore. After his death, the neighbor's son came for his mom, the old man's wife, and they moved out. Now that I think about it, it was all very creepy, but at the time, I didn't think about it much, I guess. What I wonder about now is, why did he want my older sister and I to come into his house? Why did he lie about the dog? What was he planning to do with us?